Berserk is my all-time favorite manga series, and really one of my favorite stories of all time. But with such a beloved series known amongst many, you're bound to find some crazy, off-the-wall, steamy hot takes. So I browsed through the internet to look for any possible hot takes regarding Berserk, and to my findings, I actually found some. So I thought it would be fun to go over these hot takes, to see just how hot or cold of a take it really is, what I think of it, and if I agree. And at the end of the video, I'll even give you a hot take of mine with Berserk. So, the first place I found with the collection of hot takes was on Reddit. Surprise, right? But we'll just go down the list and see what each of these are one at a time, starting from the top. So, the first take is this user saying that the Sea God arc was actually really good, and that Guts' JRPG Party is really essential for the continuation of Mira's direction with the story. First, I honestly think this is kind of a cold take, at least concerning the JRPG Party. I am aware that there are the loud-spoken people in the Berserk fandom who really despise the JRPG Party of Farnese, Serpico, Isidro, and the others, but I think it's much more to say that they're really vital for Guts' journey. It's made pretty clear in the manga that Guts is happy he's been able to make friends after so long since the old Band of the Hawk. It's been vital for his character growth for him to become less of an agitator and more of a protector. I really don't mind the party of characters who tag along Guts, especially since I think some of them have the best development of the entire story so far, especially with Farnese. If you've seen my Berserk character ranking video, you'll know that she's one of my favorite characters, and hands down has the best development behind Guts, in my opinion. But for the take itself that the Sea God arc in general was good, I would agree mostly. If you're talking about the entire Fantasia arc being good though, then I would probably weigh it down a bit and say it's mostly just solid. But if you're just talking about the part of the arc of Guts fighting the Sea God, then I would definitely agree and say that this is handedly the best part of the entire arc. Overall, not that hot of a take, and one I agree with. This next take is that the scene with Wild nearly assaulting Kaska is really stupid and forced, and that it takes away from the impact of the eclipse. This is one I do completely agree with. However, I think this particular problem kind of reveals a bigger problem Berserk had a lot of, especially in its earlier arc. That being, there are simply too many times in the series where characters nearly get assaulted, where it just starts to feel repetitive and unnecessary. I can think of so many times where Kaska was put into these extremely uncomfortable positions which really didn't need to happen, only for her to get saved last minute. It is something I think Mira realized, as you don't see too much of it anymore. But overall, I do agree with this take. However, I do still enjoy the Wild arc as a whole regardless, despite others not liking it. This next user says that they like the pirates in the Sea God arc. Immediately, off rip, no question even needed to think about this, I'm going to tell you this is wrong. I think the pirates are extremely annoying. I know Berserk has had fodder villains before, like Adon in the Golden Age, but at least those fodder villains had some character and charm to them, even if their whole charm was just being an idiot and fun to laugh at. With the pirates though, I don't get any of that. I know they probably intended to come off as super cliche and cheesy, but I really just don't enjoy them. They were easily some of the worst parts of the arc for sure. But I will say, this is undoubtedly a hot take, so I gotta respect the hustle. This next take though is a big one, and I'm interested to see what you guys in the comments think about it. This person says that Kaska isn't really all that great of a character, and that's mostly due to being in association with Guts that she's liked. They say that because she was basically a potato for over 20 years, she hasn't done anything in the story. So this is one that I unfortunately kind of agree with. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Kaska, and while she is still a good character and plays an extremely critical role for Guts, I think she's way overrated. She does have a great role in the Golden Age, one of the best in that arc for sure, but unfortunately, because of her mental state for the majority of the story going forward, she sadly hasn't got to do so much. Now, I'm not saying it was a bad decision to have her mental state be regressed. I think it was a really smart and emotional choice to pull. It made the effects of what Griffith had done even worse, another constant reminder to Guts of what Griffith had done. However, I think there are far better, more developed characters than Kaska, even simply better female characters with Farnese, for example. Still though, this is a pretty hot take, but one that I do agree with. Alright, so this next take is that Serpico is just too strong, especially next to Guts and other apostles. They defend this statement by saying that we have seen strong characters like Kaska go against Guts during the Golden Age, and she was completely still outmatched for him, even when he just joined the Hawks. On the contrary, they say that Serpico was able to handle himself too well against Guts from the 2 fights that they had. I will first say that I do think this is a hot take, and it's not really one I ever hear from people. If you've been on my channel, then you know that I'm a huge Serpico fan. I think he's single-handedly the most underrated character in all of Berserk. I won't go too much into why I like him so much, I already made a video about that. Feel free to check that out if it sounds like something you're interested in. But say that Serpico is too strong? I disagree. I think something people might be forgetting about the fight Serpico and Guts had was all about the locations. The first time they fought was along a cliffside, an extremely narrow, small area to fight, which gave Serpico quick attacks and dexterity the clear advantage. Guts was barely able to swing the Dragon Slayer at all, and was constantly kept on defense. This is something that even Serpico is aware of in the fight, as he clearly knew that if they were in the open, spacious area, he would most certainly lose to Guts. In their next fight, they are in an even bigger space, but with giant columns that surround them. Serpico still has a bit of an advantage here, and even then, he still loses the fight in the end against Guts anyway. When it comes to gauging his strength against apostles, we really haven't seen enough times where Serpico has fought against apostles to accurately make the claim he's too strong. Listen, I respect putting my boy Serpico on a high pedestal with his strength. This guy's a real one for that, but I do disagree with the take. This next take is from someone saying that it's important for characters to evolve, and that people wouldn't have liked an emo or edgy Guts like he was in the Black Swordsman arc. Yeah, I'm just going to come out and say it, that you must have pulled this take out of the freezer, because this is the coldest take by far. I don't think there's a single person who read Berserk and was like, yeah, I wish Guts didn't evolve as a person and grow. He should have stayed as an edgy maniac who got a hard-on for killing apostles. I don't think anyone has ever thought this. In fact, most people's least favorite arc in Berserk is the Black Swordsman arc, for this very reason. So, disagree with this take. Obviously, I agree with the take. Who would not agree with this take? This next take is that Berserk has hit its new high in Volume 34, but has been on a slump since then, using their reasoning that after this, we get the Sea God arc, which has great art but lacks tension, to the rest of Fantasia, with a digital art style now being used. I agree a lot with this statement, mostly in saying that a new high was reached in Volume 34. In case you forgot, Volume 34 is the climax of the Falcon of the Millennium arc, with Fento defeating Ganishka and merging the physical and astral realm. This part is easily like a top 10 moment in the entire story, with some of the best art in my opinion as well. However, I do think a lot of Fantasia does fall off. Besides the fight with the Sea God, like previously mentioned, I think Fantasia is pretty dull. The only other highlight of the arc is Kaska's Mindscape, which is a really important and vital element of the story, but the rest is not too memorable. I also agree completely that the new digital art style just doesn't look as good as the fully hand-drawn style. For me personally, the art style was at its peak in the Conviction arc. Not that much of a hot take, I feel. I think most fans would probably agree with this take. This next take is pretty interesting, with this person saying that they didn't like the Lost Children arc, and that they much preferred the newer arcs of Berserk than the older ones. They don't give any reason to back up their reason why, but this is most certainly a hot take. Of course, I disagree with it. I think the Lost Children arc is one of the best in the entire series. It's the last time we really see Guts go full manic and rageful in the goal of killing a single apostle. It has one of the best fights in the series with Guts versus Rosine, and a villain who you actually end up caring about with Rosine, as well as really good supporting characters like Jill, and it's one of the highlights of Puck's character as well throughout the story. The ending of the arc is beautiful too, with my favorite panel in Berserk being the No Paradise to Escape to. I think it sends a powerful message to both Jill and the reader that despite how terrible life can get, we have to do what is in our control, to the best of our ability, to make our life the best it can be. While I don't necessarily think the newer arcs of Berserk are bad, I think the beginning middle chunk of Berserk has been the best we've gotten so far. This next take here is saying that Fento is far too overpowered, especially against Skull Knight. They use the instance of Skull Knight slashing his Bayonet sword against Fento, and it doing nothing whatsoever. This user seems to think that Fento should have been at least a little bit injured after the encounter, because Skull Knight is just that powerful. I don't know if I would consider this a hot take, but I'm leaning towards it being one. However, I don't think I agree with it. To say that Skull Knight should have been able to damage Fento seems kind of out of place. Why should he be able to damage him? He's never been able to do any substantial harm against any of the God Hand. We even see Skull Knight attempt to attack Void, and he literally just redirects it right back at him. Sure, Skull Knight is devious against regular apostles, but we haven't seen him be able to do anything substantial against the God Hand at all, especially considering just how powerful Fento is shown to be. Finally, this last take is someone saying that they don't like all the new magic that's been introduced to the story, and liked it more when it was all about demons. I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, Berserk is a dark fantasy manga, set in a world where magic, demons, spells, and curses are all very real and shown to be. I think this is a somewhat hot take, but I also have heard a number of others feel the same way about the story. I think wherein lies the issue is about how magic was really introduced. It's important to remember that during the Golden Age arc, we didn't see any of the magic we see today, really only having the Bayonet. But even then, it really wasn't being sold as this magical item, but one that Griffith states of just being an item that will one day grant whoever has it a kingdom. In the start of the manga, though, we are introduced to Puck, who is a constant reminder that magical creatures inhabit the world of Berserk. I think the biggest reason that magic became such a big shock to some people was because of the environment that the characters were in. It only makes sense that we wouldn't see magic during the medieval kingdom battles of knights and warriors during the Golden Age, just as much as how we wouldn't see it during the Conviction arc, where one of the biggest factors of that arc was Mazgus leading a campaign against what he saw as heresy and the magic that followed it. I mean, don't forget, Farnese couldn't even perceive Puck when she first encountered him. I think magic becoming more commonplace is representative of the world that the characters live in, and how times are ever changing for the characters. Farnese leaves behind her old life to put faith in Guts. Serpico learns that Farnese is capable of handling herself, and Guts learns to put his trust into new companions. All while, soon enough, the physical and astral worlds merge. I could be reaching here trying to make something out of nothing, but I think the magic in a way is representative of Guts and the crews fully embracing the world they live in, and therefore, taking advantage of the gifts they've been given. You could definitely argue that less magic in the story was more preferable to some, and I couldn't say you were wrong for it. I don't mind the magic as a whole as a bad thing though, and as long as the story doesn't stray off the path it started and uses magic as a way to only enhance the story, then I'm okay with it, to be honest. That was all the comments I found on this particular Reddit thread, and I'll probably do a part 2 looking for more hot takes that are out there. So if that's something you want to see, just let me know in the comments, and I'll get working on that. My hot take, though, is that the Conviction arc is the best arc in Berserk, even over the Golden Age. It's emotionally resonant with its mini arc of lost children, has a villain you can love to hate with both Rosine and Mazgus, finds Guts reuniting with Kaska after so long, and has an overall amazing message on breaking away from dogmatic evils that leave you feeling out of control, and pushing against that to do what is in your control to live the best life you can. And we get introduced to Farnese. I'm going to continue to glaze her for the rest of my life. Thank you for watching though, and I'll see you next time.